You know that sinking feeling you get when you realize you've broken a rule you didn't even know existed? Like maybe you parked in the wrong spot, or I don't know, used the wrong form at the DMV. It's just frustrating, right? Well, it turns out the ancient Israelites had this surprisingly detailed legal system for that exact problem, and today we're going to break it all down. So, this is the big question Leviticus chapter 4 just dives right into. And we're not talking about deliberate shake your fist at the sky rebellion here. We're talking about unintentional mistakes. And the text gives a really clear, structured answer. It's kind of like a legal and spiritual toolkit for when good intentions just go wrong. So, let's dive in and see how it works. Okay, here's our roadmap for today. First, we're going to define what it even means to sin through ignorance. Then we'll get into the specifics of how to fix it, which, and this is the interesting part, changes a lot depending on who you are. We'll start at the top with the high priest, then look at the entire nation, and finally we'll see what happens with rulers and just everyday people. That tiered structure is really the key to the whole thing. All right, so let's get this idea of sinning through ignorance straight. Imagine you have a dietary restriction. You completely forget about it, and you accidentally eat something you're not supposed to. You didn't mean to do it, but, well, the violation still happened. That's exactly the kind of scenario we're talking about here, an unintentional slip-up. And the text itself makes this crystal clear right from the get-go. It says, if a soul shall sin through ignorance against any of the commandments. Now that phrase, through ignorance, is so important. It carves out this special legal category. It's the system basically saying, hey, we get it. People aren't perfect. Here's a way to fix things, even when there was no bad intent. And the solution? It's this very specific ritual called a sin offering. Now, it's crucial to understand this was not a punishment. The goal was atonement, which is all about making things right again, restoring balance, repairing the relationship that got a little bit damaged by the mistake. This offering was the official way to get back to a good place. So where does this whole legal code begin? Right at the very top, with the anointed priest. And that's totally deliberate. The system starts there because, as the spiritual leader, his actions have these massive, far-reaching consequences for everybody else. This is such a huge concept, corporate responsibility. The text literally says, the priest's sin brings guilt upon the people. Think about that. His private, unintentional mistake instantly becomes a public crisis. Because of his job, his error ripples out and affects the spiritual standing of the entire community. And that's why the ritual to fix it is so intense. Now just look at the details of this ritual. It's incredibly specific. First, he has to bring a bull, a really valuable, powerful animal, which shows just how serious this is. Then he lays his hands on its head, which is the symbolic act of, transferring the mistake onto the sacrifice. But the most critical step, the one that makes this ritual totally different, is number 4. And this just says it all, doesn't it? The blood, which they saw as this powerful cleaning agent, doesn't just stay outside. It has to be brought inside the sacred tabernacle itself. It shows that the leader's sin has, in a way, polluted the very heart of the nation's holy space, and it requires the most direct, potent form of cleansing possible. Okay, so if that's the high water mark for a single leader's mistake, what happens when the entire community messes up together without even realizing it? Let's jump to that scenario and see how the same principles apply. The text is drawing a direct parallel here. In one case, you have one person's error cascading down to everyone. In the other, you have the whole nation making a collective mistake. The implication is pretty profound. The community is seen as a single body with a shared responsibility, just like its leader. And here's what's truly wild. The law treats both of these situations with the exact same level of severity. The whole nation also has to bring a young bull, and the ritual is basically a mirror image of the priests, right down to taking the blood inside that sacred tent. The sin of the people is seen as just as serious as the sin of their highest leader. What a radical idea. And the whole thing wraps up with this exact same promise. This phrase is like the official verdict at the end of the process. The actions are done, atonement has been made, and forgiveness is the guaranteed result. It's the finish line they're all aiming for, every single time. All right, so we've dealt with these huge community-wide problems, but what about just a regular person? Well, the text zooms in now on individuals. First a ruler, and then a commoner. And this is where the logic of the whole system really starts to click into place, because the standards change. This right here is the biggest difference.
For an individual's mistake, the whole ritual gets scaled back. The cost is lower, and, this is the key, the blood is not brought into the inner sanctum. That's a huge signal that while their sin still needs to be dealt with, its impact isn't seen as contaminating the sacred heart of the community.
And you can see the differences laid out so clearly here. A ruler brings a male goat, while a common person brings a female goat or a lamb, less valuable animals than a bull. But notice the key action with the blood. For both of them, it's only applied to the horns of the outer altar. That's the crucial dividing line that separates their ritual from the priest's. And you can see just how precise the text is. For the ruler, it specifies a kid of the goats, a male. Then, for the common person, it shifts to a kid of the goats, a female. This isn't just arbitrary, it's a very carefully calibrated system.
So, to quickly recap the differences for individuals, you've got smaller animals, a less intense blood ritual that's confined to the outer court, and a different way of disposing of the animal's body. It's still a complete ritual, but it's one that's deliberately scaled to the perceived impact of the sin.
And yet, look at what stays exactly the same. That powerful, reassuring phrase. Even with a totally different ritual, the end result is identical. This shows that the whole system, for all its hierarchy, is built on this foundation of universal access to forgiveness. No matter who you are, there is a way to make it right. So when we pull back and look at this entire chapter, what do we really see? It's so much more than just a list of rules for sacrifices. It's a whole moral and legal framework that tells us a ton about what this ancient society actually valued. This gives us a perfect visual summary. You can see the hierarchy of offerings so clearly. At the very top, you have the bullock for the priest and the whole community. Then a step down to the male goat for a ruler, and then another step down to the female goat or lamb for a common person. It's a crystal clear, tiered system. And this reveals the central idea of the whole text. In this worldview, responsibility scales with influence. A leader's mistake, even an accident, causes more damage, so it requires a bigger fix than a private citizen's. It's basically the ancient version of, with great power comes great responsibility. Ultimately, every single case we've looked at follows this same elegant four-part logic. A mistake is discovered. An offering that matches your social standing is brought. A priest performs the specific ritual, and the guaranteed result is reconciliation and forgiveness. It's a predictable, reliable process for dealing with human error. And that leaves us with a fascinating question to chew on. This isn't just ancient history. It's a window into a society's soul. What does it say about their view of justice that they built such a complex system, not for punishing crime, but for redeeming honest mistakes? A system where responsibility is scaled, but forgiveness is available to everyone. It really makes you think about how we, today, handle accountability and grace.